It's important that the family office set up a unique and tailored investment plan for the family. I really am not a fan of cookie cutter plans. If you go to a typical broker, they'll say you're moderate, conservative, or aggressive. In my experience, that just doesn't work for wealthy families. People may be very conservative, for example, in a cash portfolio that's going to be used for living expenses, and very aggressive in private equity or venture investing, and very, very multi-generational in foundation portfolios. So it's important that you are able to have these nuances and that each portfolio is tailored properly for its function. The reports that you create will reflect the different types of vehicles that you have and make sure that each one is measured appropriately. Now, the first thing that the Chief Investment Officer is going to do for the family is to have oversight of market conditions. This means understanding what's going on in the stock and bond markets around the world, interest rates, currencies, cash flows, political events, all of the things that the big brokerage firms do. I recommend that your Chief Investment Officer be very current on what all the big houses are thinking, because those houses spend hundreds of millions of dollars on enormous analytical staffs. So we might as well take advantage of all of that great research and then put together a view that makes sense for the family. So the markets will do what they do. They go up and they go down. And typically over very long periods of time, equity markets far outperform bond markets. This is just a fact. But everything depends on your time horizon and your risk tolerance for the particular portfolio that you're looking at. You need to understand that market corrections will happen. There will be other stock market crashes. So each portfolio has to be positioned to be able to withstand a crash. And that usually means that you want to make sure you always have enough cash on hand to pay for family expenses, ideally for at least 2 or 3 years. So a very big cash cushion goes a long way to allowing you to take more risk and make more money on the money that you do put into market investments or into private investments, which are really the investments that will make the most money for you in most cases. Once we've assessed market conditions, the next thing we have to do is create the right asset allocation for each portfolio. So the family as a whole does not tend to have an asset allocation. Each portfolio has an asset allocation. The foundation will have one allocation. A trust will have a different allocation. A personal account may have a different allocation. An account for a grandchild or generation skipping trust will have a different allocation. So we want to make sure that each portfolio is addressed separately. Then we want to make sure that we look across the portfolios to make sure that the overall risk being taken by the family makes sense. Asset allocation is going to vary by the country that you live in, the currency that you use, and your time horizon. So for example, somebody in an emerging market country may put a lot of their safe money in a place like the United States for safekeeping, while they put the money that they're using to grow their businesses in their home country, as an example. So currency really depends on where your operations are around the world and how you're using your cash. It's really important that you have the best advice possible when you're setting up the asset allocation for each portfolio. You set a strategic asset allocation, perhaps with bands of how big you can go on that particular asset allocation. For example, let's say a portfolio is 40% bonds and 60% equities, but the equities could go as high as 90% and they could go as low as 20%. And then you have a tactical asset allocation that you use as markets change. Typically, you work with an investment committee type structure to review your asset allocation at least once a year or more frequently if the markets are very volatile, and that you adjust your strategic bands depending on what's going on in the market. So now you have your asset allocation. Now you have to fill your buckets, as it were. You have to now pick managers to manage the various pieces of your asset allocation. Many families I know for the large publicly traded securities, like the big firms, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Pictet, these are all fantastic banks, and they often provide additional services. For example, they might be lending to your corporate entities, or they might be providing terrific checking accounts for you on the banking side. Frankly, they're all fairly similar, so go with the ones that you like. It's good to spread your money out over a few of them depending on what countries you live in, and those are the big institutions that will hold your liquid securities.